Honestly, it's not a surprise to me that over 100 elephants are killed every single day simply for their ivory. And the same thing is happening to rhinos simply because of human greed. And it's absolutely insane because all ivory is really the same material that our nails are. But it can range from $500 all the way up to $1,500 on the black market. And yes, the price can seem insane and you may be thinking like, why is this even really a problem? But the problem isn't even just simply the ivory in and of itself being traded, but it's the fact that the animals have to be killed for them to actually be able to have their ivory taken from them. And that's making the elephant populations dwindle at about 8% every single year, and then rhinos pretty much in the same exact situation simply because of human greed. But since the demand for ivory is so large in many different African and Asian countries as well, it's really hard to stop it. The money is flowing across international borders, and this illicit economy is honestly really hard to stop the same way that drugs are transported and traded across international boundaries. It just makes it really hard to actually dismantle this very lucrative endeavor. And of course it would make sense to try and stop them, but there are conservationists and anti-poaching organizations that are coming face to face with death in these high-risk situations simply to try and stop these poachers. Now, there's a whole bunch of legal and illegal things that are going on right now within the realm of the ivory trade, but there are so many loopholes in it as well. And a big emphasis on the legal aspect of it, because these legal loopholes are really what's allowing for this ivory trade to continue happening. And law enforcement is challenged by having to go to different places, country to country, that have different laws, different cultural norms, and also be able to have to traverse various geographical boundaries to actually be able to enforce the laws that they actually have to be able to protect. And on top of that, different antique ivory is technically legal. So if you have some antique ivory to be able to sell, then you can, don't do it, but you can. So if you have some antique ivory to sell, you can have an elephant tusk and sell that for about $300,000 on the black market. And as you can imagine, loopholes like these are allowing for the illegal ivory to actually be transported in a quote-unquote legal way. But due to some upcoming technology, there can be more step-by-step legislation in it. But there's also talks about having some genetic testing to be able to actually determine if things are quote-unquote antique ivory, and also some more harsher punishments for poachers or selling of illegal ivory. And it's not just the elephants that are affected by this or the rhinos that are affected by this. It's also the local communities that are surrounded by all of this poaching and drama surrounding it as well. And even you and I, even though we're not strictly in that location, we still are affected by it through ripple effects. And this isn't just affecting elephants and rhinos, it's affecting the ecosystems that they're in from them, other animals, plants, and even us as humans. It's the loss of key species like these that are integral to ecosystems that are having mad rippling effects on the world today. And there are communities that are dependent on the resources coming from different ecosystems. But if stuff like this keeps on happening, then it depletes all those resources, and it may just seem like it's an animal problem, but it's also impacting people that we just don't know. So I reach out to you asking, if you don't know somebody, does that mean that it's okay to just neglect them at that point? Now, one of the big things that makes it a little sticky issue is the fact that culture and religion play a big role into the illegal ivory trade, as well as the ivory trade in general. In many cultures, ivory is valued for its beauty, it's admired for its different significance and religious powers, and there's different religious ceremonies also surrounding the ivory. So it's not solely that it's all illegal ivory and it's intended for just misuse. There is some cultural and religious significance to it as well. Now, just for some context, it's not just Africa and Asia, because for the past hundreds of years, some of the biggest clients and movers of illegal ivory are Europe and America. And actually understanding the history behind the illegal ivory trade is really what's going to be able to address the issues for what's to come with the illegal ivory trade. The trade has had significant economic implications on both the black market, but also on local economies where the poaching is actually happening and where that poaching efforts are going to. But economic alternatives and community development are two things that we can be able to do to be able to try and remedy the communities that this is impacting. And honestly, the cultural attachment to ivory remains strong in some regions around the world, but being able to educate some people, whether it changes their mind or not, just being able to educate them on the aspect of the illegal ivory trade may be able to change their beliefs. And even if it doesn't change their beliefs per se, it may be able to shift their perspective on the entire situation and just be able to educate them a little bit. But even though I had a really long-winded way of saying it, the environment that we live in is really the most important fact in our lives. If we don't have the environment to actually live in, then what would we actually be? What would we actually be able to accomplish? And you can see the preciousness of nature and all the wonders that it has to offer. And by not addressing problems like these, of this dark underworld that we have, we're going to end up losing out not only on opportunities for ourselves, but also for people that we don't even know. And for me in my heart, that feels wrong, and I want to be able to do anything that I can to be able to promote conservation in all different aspects. So hopefully you were able to take a little bit of something from this episode of Through Jeremiah's Eyes, and I'll see you in the next video.